Hey, welcome to the Quarterly Book Club. Why quarterly? Because you're busy and books are long. I'm Samantha, and in this quarter 2018, we're going to be talking about Mrs. Sherlock Holmes by Brad Ricca. I have two awesome ladies joining me, Sam and Jonell, and I can't wait to get started. As of this recording, tomorrow is Father's Day, so just like to say hello and happy Father's Day to all the wonderful daddies out there. My mom gets a shout out for Father's Day because she's so awesome. She gets celebrated on both parents' days. So sit back for a wild ride, great conversation, and with two other awesome, wonderful ladies. So welcome to the Quarterly Book Club. I'm Samantha, and why quarterly? Because you're busy and books are long. I am joined here by another Sam and a friend JoJo. So you've got two Sams, one JoJo, and it's short for Jonell. So she said she didn't care which name I used, so she said whatever felt right. JoJo feels right. So, the book that we read this quarter was Mrs. Sherlock Holmes, the story of the very first female U.S. district attorney, and it was by Brad Ricca, historical nonfiction. She was a real person. So, ladies, what did you think of the book? Honest assessment.
I didn't like it.
And why? We have not talked about this ahead of time, so.
Okay. I didn't like it because I was thinking about, would I write a book about my husband? Would I understand everything that he had experienced and everything that he knew in life? And I wouldn't, because I don't understand that perspective. So I would find it very challenging to write about a man. And so discovering that it was a man writing about a woman who hasn't been through what we go through, and I just felt like it would be hard for him to understand and articulate to me in a way that it would resonate with me, the whole story.
Without mansplaining?
Yeah.
Did you feel that there was any, mansplaining going on in this?
I mean, I felt dude was probably a really great I'm no critic. I've read a lot of books, but I'm no critic. I just felt like he's probably an excellent researcher because he had a lot of facts and a lot of details.
Very well researched, yeah.
It just, to me, it didn't read, eloquently in a way that made me, oh my gosh, wait, let me read that again. Oh my gosh, yeah, I can totally feel that.
Okay. Sam, what about you?
I had mixed feelings too. I did think that it was interesting. Obviously it's easy for our generation to forget kind of those who trudged ahead of us and what it really would have been like to be a professional female lawyer in New York City at the turn of the century and things like that. I mean, obviously we have different opportunities. But I have to agree with Jonell. When I read some of the notes at the end of the book and things like that, how they kind of got you up to speed on what ultimately happened to different characters, and they went a little bit more in depth about Grace. Through the book they refer to her as different names, so I assume that through this she had gotten married, etc., and things like that. And then I almost felt like the perspective of the book was weird because it did read like a fictional story, a historical account, but then it completely glossed over all of this stuff. What would it have been like for a man at the turn of the century where his wife is traipsing around down south trying to help all these immigrants and things like that and being gone for months at a time? Not that I feel like it needed to be from his perspective or a lot on that, but there's not even a gloss over. Grace was missing her husband or anything like that. And then
there was nothing personal for her.
Yeah, I agree. And then, I am definitely the book club slacker because I literally finished the book last night.
Oh, stop.
And
Me too.
No.
Part of it, honestly, for me, was I felt like the rhythm of the book, how I felt like the crescendo of it, that I was like the cliffhanger kind of happened mid-book. And then afterwards, it kind of like went through and tied up loose ends and stuff like that. But I kind of stalled and lost interest, like after I hit that crescendo, and then like tried to keep reading for like 2 weeks, and I'd get distracted and not really be like, oh my gosh, I've got to know what happens next. So I found like kind of the rhythm of the book a little bit weird, and obviously you have to be accurate to the period, but I don't know if it's just so much like the way that the language was put together that it's period appropriate, but I'm falling asleep in my fainting chair over here.
Oh, stop. I was a third of the way, I was a third of an inch, not a third of the way through. I was a third of an inch in, and I was like,
Well, I actually flipped ahead, and then I saw that like there was legitimately like 50 pages of like research, all of his citations and things. I was like, oh god, I'm farther along than I thought I was.
I'm getting there.
Like, okay, good. But I did appreciate the epilogue at the end, like you said.
Yeah, it was really
that,
good.
But there wasn't really there like was not an end in a way. Like you had
her
to read.
death was like a little tiny.
Oh, she had this
few
whole history, and then she
sentences,
died.
Her sister claimed her body.
Bye.
Okay.
And cut.
I'm with you. I'm with you there. Yeah.
But I'm pretty much on the book. I didn't dislike the book. It was in the middle for me. It wasn't there wasn't anything wrong with it. He was, like you said, Brad Ricca is great with research. It's very factual. It's very well done. But yeah, there was this part in like the beginning, middle, and part of the beginning that went off in this weird direction. I feel like the description of the book is very light compared to what the book actually is.
Sure.
And I wasn't expecting half the stuff that was happening. I was like, okay. So it goes off in this weird direction, and then he brings it back, and I was like, okay, that's where we are. Okay. And then the whole middle was pretty intriguing. When she's looking for Ruth, and like that's what it was. Okay, this is what I wanted to get to, and then it could have ended there and then gone into like everyone else's history and what happened to them. But then he goes off into the other stuff, like what happened to Koki, in Italy and the prisons, and he goes off in this other tangent, then tries to bring it back around. So, yeah, there's parts that I thought were really like, okay, cool, this is what I came here for, and then other parts I'm like, how that track is going that way. Isn't this the track you want? So.
I felt that too.
Little this, little that. But ultimately, how badass was Grace?
She was pretty amazing. I mean, truly, concerning the things that she would have been up against. And, obviously, one thing that I found that was amazing, aside from Grace, was the parallels to the same things that we see today, in that if a woman disappears or is attacked, then immediately this whole questioning of, the assumption that Ruth eloped and ran off with a man and had, some kind of, nefarious part in all this, when in fact she was completely innocent. We see that still today on both sides of that story, both the woman who's being doubted as a professional along with Ruth as a victim, and that was it's amazing to see how far we've come, and yet how far we haven't come at all.
Oh, exactly. And I was just talking about that. We did talk a little bit before you got here, and I was telling Jonell that
half hour.
And I was talking to Jonell about that, how little of a difference female victims /or survivors are treated from then to now. Like 1907, but what was really great was Ruth's family was like, I know what's true.
Right.
And the family stood up for her integrity the whole time. And the one part that really struck me, that got me a little teary, that when her dad was doing a news conference or a press conference, and said, I don't care if you ran off with someone. I don't care if you're in trouble. I don't care if they are doing what the news says you did. I still want you. You are mine. You are my child, which does not happen all the time now either.
Right.
And that was it in 1907, when it's all about honor and your family. What's it called? Reputation. He didn't care about reputation. He just wanted his child back.
Right. And I found it interesting also, the author himself makes mention of the fact he was writing the book in 2013 when those women were found in that house, kept captive for 10 years in Cleveland,
Oh, yeah.
and how that really struck a chord with him, you know, that anguish obviously transcends time. It still translates today. You know, what would you face if this was your child that suddenly was lost in the mix of a big city? So it was really, it harkens home.
I like the part where, like, it's all these, like, women, and they're getting dressed up, and they're wearing, like, nice things. They've had their hair done, you can imagine. You know, they're high society. And they go to this thing where they're going to eat, and they're going to drink, and they're going to have fun, maybe dance. And then she stands up and starts talking about dead girls. She can't even prove. And she's like, yeah, but what about these dead girls? And then, so, like, you're smoking your cigarettes, and you're drinking your martinis.
Through that metal, like, long metal French thing.
Right.
I always forget what that thing's called.
Yes.
Through that, you know.
And then she starts talking about dead girls. So she was kind of like, yeah, you know, that's great. I'm going to come here and I'm going to use this microphone to get out this message and not just be like, have fun. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I would have fun. I'd be like, I worked, now I play.
Yeah, Grace was all work.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't know about a lot of play
And
there.
it was kind of interesting how they sort of glossed over like all these later social clubs, because in one way
they
I
did.
think Grace like really, you know, again embodied, I think at the time when she would have gone to NYU, Harvard and Yale were probably still not accepting women to enroll and things like that. But then like I felt like her causes that she went for on a moral point of view were kind of square and uptight. Like she was both. She was both kind of a trailblazer professionally, but then it seemed like morally and like what she was encouraging these girls to do in these social clubs was actually kind of, I don't know, not religious, but really conservative in a lot of ways.
She was very conservative. In the end, she was pressed by one of the journalists. Was like, well, would you rather be home or would you rather be working? And she's like, well, I'd rather be home, but there is work to be done. And you know, she's I can't remember the quote, and I didn't write it down. Where she's talking about women. I'm not asking for anything more than women to be treated equally, and for because she was born in like what late 1870s. So for that time period to even have that in your head of equality was just non-existent or very little existence, and was looked down upon. But she, you know, all she wanted was equality, and she would like to be home and doing what she liked to cook. She liked to.
There's value in that.
Yeah, there is, absolutely. Yeah. But she's like, in order for women to be able to do that and not be looked down upon, I need to do this.
Right. Right. Yeah, I almost wish that they had gone a little bit more into the book of, I don't know, taking some artistic license with her character and what her thought process might have been, and more of the private or domestic side of her. You know, we get so much of a clear picture of who she was professionally.
Yeah.
Speaking of pictures, I did appreciate that. It was pretty amazing in the book when you know, the pictures are inset inside of the story later, and how much the characters, like Kron was exactly what I pictured him to be. So that was nice when you can like put that
beefy arm,
yeah,
probably some hair, a lot of hair.
Yeah, I liked Kron. You know, he was there for her all the way.
Right.
So when they finally, so Ruth went missing, and then the author switches to Grace's like beginning times where she started out. So that was sort of a jerk. You know, it's like, oh, this girl's missing, everything's bad. Okay, so then there's this story. This girl just graduated college, and you're kind of like, oh, okay. And then they come together, and
She's a beautiful ice skater.
Yes. I thought it, and I mean, didn't live in that time period, but you go to a motorcycle shop to get your skates sharpened.
Yeah.
The fact that the motorcycle shop was sort of like a hardware shop in general, like a handyman shop.
Sewing shop, maybe, where they sharpen like sewing shears. That's where I would go. Motorcycle shop seems like I want to meet a man. And I'm not saying.
Oh, but she was
asked
just
for it.
She was so beautiful. He, you know, Alfredo Coqui just couldn't help himself.
Right. Right.
And
as though her being beautiful. You know, they had to say it. Otherwise, they'd be like, "Oh, she was ugly."
homely
Yeah.
looking.
Yeah.
Right.
No one would care about that, but beautiful ice skater.
Gonna get all the news.
That's so silly to say that.
Well,
What does it matter?
It doesn't matter, but that's,
Oh, gosh.
and like we're saying, the parallels from this book are still happening today.
Yeah.
And when I was getting into this book further, I was like, I'm so happy I have these two coming on talking about this book because, you know, we're three very, very strong, tough, take no prisoners type of women. And, you know, to be talking about what's going on today and what happened then and how it hasn't changed.
Right.
I was like, who
Right.
better to talk about it with than you guys? And, you know, you have Alfredo Cocchi came from Italy, brought his wife over, and then he was sent off to Bologna. And he got in trouble there, too, with another woman. But his defense, which would probably still work today, was, oh, I was kidding. I was just kidding. Because she was able to fend him off. And he was like, oh, I was joking.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
No,
It
that
is.
would still work.
It's really amazing. Even, you know, we have so much more forensic evidence, obviously. Like, really, when I think back to, like, olden times or whatever the case, I'm like, how dumb were y'all to get caught? I mean, they had, you know, everything was so hearsay, which obviously worked in the other direction also. You know, I did appreciate that they talked about some of the social issues of the time, the gentleman who was wrongly hanged.
Yeah.
For the murder and things like that on completely, I wouldn't even call it circumstantial evidence. I would call it fabricated evidence and things like that. But there's still so much of a media circus, and, you know, the fact of the matter is our judicial system is still for sale to the highest bidder. You got the money to find the lawyer, you know, it might. And, you know, thank God we still have people like Grace today to, you know, take people's cases like the ACLU and things like that, of people who don't have the means to fight off these false accusations and things like that. But think about how many people would have died, you know, in vain back then as a mistake is really unfortunate. And the fact that, again, it still happens today all the time.
And she not only helped immigrants, she not only helped other women, she also helped mentally ill,
Yes.
which, you know, is normally just put them in the corner.
That had a huge stigma
Yeah.
at the time. Huge. Absolutely. Everyone just got lumped into the same crazy house, no matter what you were dealing with.
Yep.
So, yeah, it's pretty amazing how, like I said, reading through, I'm like, wow, yay, we have the right to vote. Then I'm like, shit, no, we are still talking about the same shit.
Yeah, all the time. Still talking about it. You know, what did your cleavage is slightly showing? What did you do to antagonize your attacker? What did you do to look so pretty
Plenty.
that someone wanted to hurt you? Like,
I have lips on my face.
I dare accentuate my long
wanted it.
eyelashes. You know,
Well, I
like,
think
come on.
it's interesting. In the end of the book, they explain that at least Grace started becoming the woman in black shortly after, I think it was both of her parents had passed away. But in fact, I wonder if part of that was truly to remove the aspect of her
Femininity.
own femininity or identity. I feel like it would have been a different character, a different story, a different person if she wore
Like floral.
Right, floral or hot pink or something of that nature. I think she wore the black not only to take herself out of the equation sometimes of the conversation at hand, but also to try to wield more respect. And, you know, it's sad that she would have to shun femininity, I mean, unless she really, I love black, obviously. I mean, we all look good in black. But, you know, back then there was a lot of meaning behind different, you know, colors and things like that. And I definitely thought about that I felt like Grace kind of tried to take her identity out of it to get to the issues at hand or for people to heed her words and things like that.
I mean,
That's
it
a great
probably
point.
made her appear more of a serious character rather than someone who was just frilly and thinking about, you know, womanly things. So it probably helped her gain respect in a courtroom.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Clothes carry a lot of weight to them. I mean, still to this day, we look at people's clothing. How do you dress yourself? How do you present yourself? And, you know, even more emphasis was put on it at that time. So I think that's a very valid point and thought, and probably part of what her thought process was. Again, like you were saying in the beginning, Brad Ricca not being a woman, he can report factually very well. He wrote a good book. He wrote a well-researched book, but he can't get deep down mentally into, or maybe even fathom what she was thinking during those times.
Right.
And during those cases.
Not that it would have been easy for a man to do all that stuff. It would have been hard for him too.
Sure.
But, you're looking at, posters talking about a woman's right to vote, and yet she's speaking with, governors and landowners, and she has no right to own land, can't vote for any laws, and yet she is coming in and releasing people of, a judgment that's hanging over their head.
Mm-hmm. And in the very beginning, what I thought was really interesting is, she would tell people, I might not be able to get you free, but a reduced sentence was a win. And which it was. I mean, you have to start somewhere. Right. And she's like, look, I can get you off death row, because that was packed full. I can get you off death row. I can help you reduce your sentence. I can help you gain visitation rights, but I might not be able to get this off of you completely.
Right.
And the people she's dealing with don't speak English or don't speak a lot of English, and they're just damn thankful that someone is there to help them.
Right.
And they're just as elated to have any relief, whether it's complete or not. It's just any little bit of relief.
Yeah, you mentioned how the story kind of seems to go off on these weird tangents, how when, again, Grace goes down south and there's the whole saga about her helping the Italian immigrants on the plantation, and then I can't remember the character names, but the woman that was facing, I think she was facing death row at some point, and she ended up getting 8 years, and she was so thankful for that, and it eventually went back to the family. I wonder if part of that was kind of setting up, like when it got to Grace's personal cases, or these really critical Alfred Kochian things, trying to paint a picture of what the judiciary system was like at the time, and how everything could just sway on a single statement, and I guess that's still true today, but it really painted a picture for me. And also the way that, not only I feel like Grace as a character and as a woman in New York City is kind of one aspect, but then her going down south, her dealing with people who see her as an outsider, obviously, just because she's a northerner, because she's not a southerner. And then in relation to the good old boys down there, the politicians, things like that. I feel like Grace had to face different types of adversity as a woman from different groups, be it the immigrants or the people in New York City or down south and things like that. The dynamic changed of what she was up against.
And how easily it was for someone to be crazy and then sane, and then crazy and sane. And usually it was a woman who was...
Well, it's her lady time. She's insane.
After the baby...
Hysteria.
She'll recover. And then the fainting, and it's like, well, that's the corset, and it's summer, and she's hot.
Yeah.
And you don't drink water.
Right, so I'm happy that I read it, because I learned some words, and I marked them. I'm going to use them.
Thank you.
Peonage.
What was that?
Peonage. I said, okay, so we just need slaves so bad that now we have to commit peonage. And we still can't find any white folks to do the work. Gotta find the other ones. This is like, what is it? The Lies My Teacher Never Told Me or something? What is that book?
I never read that one.
I don't know. It's something. It's some book about like real history where it's like you find out what really happened. Like, so after slavery, everything was fine and there was no hiccup, and then everything just
it transitioned so smoothly.
And, there was always workers.
Indentured servitude. Well, there was. I love watching those shows on History Channel, like the True History, and I was like, oh. That's so interesting because I was like, I didn't learn that as a kid. They lied to me. Yeah. So like I was telling my boyfriend and our producer, I was like, man, if I ever have kids, and they have to do a report for history, it is going to be the real history, and
Right.
they're going to be just like, no, teacher, this is wrong. Your book is wrong.
Right. Or I love
Your
how,
book.
right. Or like how it would just like kind of gloss over something
Oh,
like
yeah,
that.
totally.
You know, the fact that you have these
Right.
entire camps of indentured servants, effectively, you know, from other countries that don't speak the fluent language and things like that. And, you know, I even thought about little things as they were, you know, describing the conditions. I'm like, these people are in swampland with like crappy window screens and no AC.
Yeah.
And like that's so hashtag first world problems of me. But I mean, even those little logistics, I'm like, think about what it would have been like to be like a woman with a baby, cholera, I don't know, going down there, paying your $17 for your bag of flour, and then just all the little, you know, it's so easy to gloss over what day to day would have really been like for these families that they describe.
Right. So what you're saying is a 10-year-old reading a history book about this is just going to be like, la, 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 la. But
Right.
a 35, 40-year-old woman is going to read it and be like,
All that they
there's
had to
like
do.
volumes within that little paragraph.
Yes.
Yeah. Because
Yeah.
I'm thinking like, I don't know, I would just find the river and I would fish and I would bring the fish home and then I would cook it and then I would eat it and then I would give it to my baby and I would breastfeed my baby, you know, but
But
probably
it's not that easy.
No.
Which is, yeah, exactly. Like, you're going to get it glossed over, and then,
Babies dying.
yeah, all the time.
And what was it called? Sunny Acres?
Sunnyside.
Gosh
Sunnyside.
dang it,
Sunnyside.
man. You call something like that? Tell some Italians about the sun. What is it in Italian? Soul or something?
Yeah, this,
You're gonna
this
be
wonderful
thinking like,
place.
Right.
You're going to make all this
wow.
money.
Right.
You get to keep a giant portion of it. You're going to be rich beyond your wildest dreams.
You're gonna be like a
You're going to be taken care of. Yeah, you're going to be taken care of. Your family will be. You'll be given a home. You'll be given acreage.
Right.
This is all yours, and they're
and just
slaves.
like that song, 16 tons. What do you get? Another day older and deeper in debt. Something. Don't ask me because I can't go. I owe my soul to the company store. It's like the company store. Like it's a monopoly.
Yeah. Well, and we have to remember also that at that time, honestly, that existed in almost every industry. Like I always think back to like
Right.
the coal miners, obviously, and the store, and they had to buy their own canary. That there was always a story. A guy, you had to buy your canary to take into the mine to tell you when the gas was coming that would kill you, and he couldn't afford the canary and dinner, so he got a chicken. And the carbon monoxide came and killed him because chickens apparently have a tolerance of 500 times
They
a
love
weekend.
carbon dioxide.
Right, of the carbon dioxide or whatever.
Once we're all done and gone, it's just going to be chickens and cockroaches.
No.
And plastic bottles and straws.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Killing whatever made it afterwards. So,
Styrofoam packing.
yeah, no. But honestly, I mean, that stuff even today goes on so much. In the Philippines, you know, $1 billion of our economy is by overseas workers. And you hear all these horror stories of women that are, you know, told, come to Saudi Arabia or come to, again, another country. You'll have a great job. You'll be able to send all sorts of money home. And in some cases, they do make a decent living, and that's fine. But there's so many horror stories that are not like that. But in desperation, when you live somewhere, I don't know what Italy was like at the turn of the century.
Yeah.
But assuming you have no local economy, you know, you do it out of desperation to support your rest of your family that's home, and that pattern still keeps going and going and going. I think maybe that was one of the most powerful aspects of the book. Is it's easy to forget the parallels of things that really have not changed at all.
So I really
in fact.
wonder if that dude was the dude from Sunny Acres or whatever it's called.
That list at
who
the
escaped.
end. Yeah.
I wonder if him, I don't know the years or whatever, or his son or nephew or whatever, was related to the dude who murdered Rose. Rose?
Ruth.
Ruth.
Okay.
And did I miss? They explicitly make the statement at the end if who it truly was? I don't know if I somehow didn't, because obviously
He was on the list, and they're like, "Oh, thank goodness she didn't see that. Otherwise, she'd be hunting him down."
Right.
He was on the name was on the list, but there was no definitive conclusion whether it was actually him.
right, okay. 'Cause
Are you talking about who killed her, actually?
right, because there was the
He was saying his wife did
wife,
it.
right?
The fatal blow.
Exactly.
Oh no, they found him guilty. I thought you were talking about the escape.
Right.
At the end.
I knew that.
She did it too. She was pissed off.
Well, and that,
Oh
you know,
my gosh.
she was a good example of how they also painted the peripheral female characters in the books. Like, all the wives of all these characters either felt like Mrs. Kruger. Granted, if my child was lost, I would be a basket case. But she was very helpless and spent her days weeping and crying and all this stuff. Maria Cocchi was a very stereotypical Italian on fuego, you know, crazy jealous wife and all this stuff. But
I'm not telling you anything.
Right. I just didn't know if they had truly clarified whether or not she, you know, he was just using that as part of his tactic to lessen his sentence, or if there was a grain of truth to that, or if, you know, finally in, I don't know, old age or something, he admitted that yes, it was him that just murdered and killed this woman.
I don't know. I feel like you can't even believe anything he says, because when you do this, you can't really expect your word to be holding anything, any water.
Yeah.
I just think about it personally. If my husband is cheating on me again and again and again, I'm either going to kill him or I'm going to kill him.
Janelle, I'll put some money on your
Or both.
commissary.
Yeah, there we go. We'll come visit
Money
you.
on my books.
We'll come visit you in prison.
I told Tyson, I said, bitches aren't born, they're made.
That's very true. It's very true.
So
Like, it's up to
make
you.
me a bitch.
Well, and they made mention of Grace again. Like you said, it was kind of confusing how they didn't at least say Grace had been remarried. She is now Grace Humiston, or
Her name, because I think Quackenbrough was the first husband.
correct.
And
correct.
I thought that was the
Couldn't
coolest.
take it all the holidays.
It was the coolest last name.
And I do feel like there was
Quackenbow.
some, I don't know, value in even making mention explicitly. So, like, I'm reading through this prologue or whatever, and I'm like, so did the first husband die, is what I thought
they didn't
maybe? No, they got
mention.
divorced. And that at the time would have been very powerful and
Pearl clutching.
controversial. Exactly. Like, I felt like that would have added something to the story or her character and background. And like you said, to read that at the end was like well, you go, girl. Okay, that kind of moment.
She's an independent woman, all right.
Right,
And then
right.
got remarried to become Humiston, but there was no mention of her getting remarried. And
Or whatever happened to that guy.
only
But see,
the
that's-
husband's last names were
That's what
mentioned. I
I'm
don't remember the
talking
first
about,
names.
though.
No.
Dudes aren't going to go in depth. They're not necessarily interested in the whole story.
Yeah.
Like I said, the journey. You know, and I'm sure you would be interested in what brought them there.
Right.
You know, the
It was a very
foreplay of
factual
the whole thing.
book, which
Yeah.
which I don't mind. But yes, I do like, if I'm reading about someone, I want to know
How did
about
her first
them.
marriage end? What did he think about her missing the 4th of July?
Would have been I'm
was
with you. I would have
holidays.
liked to know what the inner workings of their relationship
because we've all
was like.
experienced it.
Yeah.
Hey, you know, you're paying too much attention to your job. Like, okay. Hey, you know, like,
Right.
there's many directions that women are pulled in, and it's like, okay, I'll try to live up to all of them at the same freaking time.
Which still today.
And
yeah.
whenever you need one of them to pop up, I'll try to be that.
Well,
Right.
the other
okay.
book I'm reading right now is also historical nonfiction, and it's Secretariat. And the woman who owns Secretariat, you know, the racehorse, it's talking about how her husband doesn't like her spending all the time at the track. She doesn't like, you know, she's missing holidays, and and she's like, you know what? I'm gonna do what I want to do. This is my family's legacy. This is the last thing we have, and I'm gonna go through with it. So I was just like, oh, cool. So yeah, it would have been nice to know a little bit more about
And
her.
Probably because there's men at the racetrack. I probably had a little bit to
Probably,
do
but it has
with
not been
it.
explicitly said
Yeah.
yet. I'm only halfway through, but
Mainly
that
men
maybe
are
you
the
never know.
racetrack. Wait, this was a movie though.
It was, but it was originally the movie. This was the book the movie was made off
Oh,
of.
okay, cool. Yeah, that's nice.
Yeah, I read Seabiscuit too, and that was a really good one. By Laura Hillenbrand. She's one of the best nonfiction writers out there, I think.
That's nice.
She's only done 2 books though, because she has like chronic fatigue syndrome, so it's very, very hard for her, and she's heavily researched. It's very hard for her to be working like multiple hours a day, and I'm like, I understand you're a human, and I adore what you do, but I love your work.
Take some iron.
Take a nap, sweetie. Little
Like,
siesta.
do what you need to do to get your book
Multivitamin.
out, but I wish I could be like, just give it to me now, but she's a human, and I can't.
Well, I mean, obviously, the millions.
They don't
of,
owe me anything.
I
She
was
doesn't owe
gonna
me
say,
anything.
The millions of fans for George
R.R.
Martin.
Martin, yep.
Yes, it's the same thing.
Get it out now, dude. He's living his life.
Well, especially when you are writing entire universes,
Gigantic, epic.
and you have to like. There's some of these books that I'm glad that they do have like partnering books or things because I'm like, what kind of creature is that again? And what like that was my husband is really into science fiction, and there are some things that there's enough there for me too, but some of them I'm like dude. I don't know. I feel like I need a sub book just to be able to follow the book, if that makes sense. And
Yeah.
it can be
There's lots of reference books out there, so you can cross-examine.
right, absolutely.
But yeah, this one was Mrs. Sherlock Holmes was very factual, and I think she's a really good example as to what women can accomplish when they really put their heads down and not like, but when they really put your nose to the grindstone and when you're persistent.
Absolutely, she was that. She was definitely incredibly tenacious and persistent, and again, especially after her reputation was tarnished after
her
things
downfall.
like that, and to continue to. Again, that was hard to read through.
It was.
a little bit,
That was the part where I started getting like, okay, you could have ended this
right,
20 pages ago.
on a high note, exactly. But it was kind of interesting to see like how she decided then to take herself out of the spotlight and try to work behind the scenes to continue her causes that she had going on there. But
And then the new people, like her new boss that came in and was trying to like shut down all of her projects, and she's like, well, I'm just going to go to this district and do my things. And then she was almost attacked. There was a threat of an attack when she had her shield taken away, and she's like, I'm never going to feel safe again until I have my shield
Black
back.
Hand, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So is this type of book something that, let's start with you, that you would usually read?
I do read historical-based fiction. I do enjoy it. I said to my coworkers when I was describing the book, I said, I don't know that I need, like, Days of Our Lives. Mm-hmm. I just felt like there was a little bit of a lack of if you're effectively giving an account of someone's career, I feel like their personal life runs parallel to that, and there should have been more of a person story. But, again, I really thought that it was a good read just based on... the greater, all the social and the bigger picture issues that, again, it's so easy for us in our everyday lives of trying to get to and from work and our own kids and jobs and things like that we forget kind of what society was like 120, 130 years ago and things like that. So I did find it a powerful read. Yeah.
Good. What do you, so is this something that you would typically pick up? Or would you pick it up just for me?
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I'd probably go to Barnes & Noble, drink my coffee, eat my cookie, read half of it, and decide after I read half whether I wanted to buy it off of some discount website.
I can't say I don't do the same thing.
So is this, because you said historical fiction, is this historical fiction or is this
Nonfiction.
biography?
This is biography, it's nonfiction.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Oh, okay.
No, it's fine.
Well, I didn't know.
It read very fiction in the beginning, so I had to double check because I do, like, every year is a different genre. So I'm like, oh, this year's genre for all 4 quarters is historical nonfiction. So I was like, did I accidentally pick a fiction book? So I had to go double check. Okay, no, she was a real person.
Well,
this is nonfiction. Okay.
sometimes,
But
I
it
mean,
did
like-
read very, it started very fiction.
Right, and I'm sure the reason why I'm feeling like it didn't have feeling is because you can't really articulate because you weren't there. Mm-hmm. So it almost is a fiction unless it would be a fiction if he elaborated, I suppose. Yeah, because he
does
wasn't
make
there.
sense.
Right.
Yep.
And it was all in third person point of view.
Right.
Obviously, he never had the perspective
Right.
of Grace in
Yeah.
the book.
Right. So it's nonfiction.
yeah.
I don't care if it's fiction or nonfiction. If I'm getting a perspective from the time, because I'm coming off of like biblical biblical stuff about women who were just sort of, as you said, glossed over in the Bible, that's not enough for me. Like, I need to know more about what her life would have been like. And so nobody knows what Sarah's life was like. Nobody knows. And Noah's wife wasn't even given a name.
Yeah.
We just know her as Noah's wife. So I like those kind of books because it tells me where I came from as a woman, what they had dealt with and what they did and how they overcame it and how now they're glorified. Like, how can I be remembered? And what kind of life should I live? And just take that into consideration. So I love books about women and how they prevail and what they did and how they're looked at now. And I love history. I love my future, but
I have a couple recommendations for you then.
Okay, cool. Because I got something I want to read too, and it's going to be Abraham's Wife. I think it's Abraham's Wife.
Well, there was one, and these are two nonfiction as well. They're historical, and because there's been tons of books coming out about women and the lives they led, and what they did during the war. Like we have Hidden Figures, which was then turned into a movie. Then there's Rocket Girls, which is the women who created and then there was the one I read was called Code Girls, and it's about the women coders and decoders for World War II. Fascinating. And one of my favorite books now is called Radium Girls. Oh my gosh, what they went through is harrowing. Terrible, disgusting, with radium. Because they were the dial painters of that time in World War I, and so what they would do is, they started out with just painting dials in a watch.
They're just painting.
Yeah, but they're painting
okay.
because radium is glow in the dark, and at that time, radium was like. It was everywhere. It was in pills. It was in water. It was in home cleaning stuff. But it was radium because it was. They would just say it was because marketing and no one.
They'd call it rad.
Yeah, woo. But real radium they would mix with paint and they would paint with. So what they would do was called lip pointing. So because it has to be so fine. Lip pointing. Okay. So they would take their brush.
Shut up.
And put it in, and then their mouths are just.
Wasn't that the girls that had that flossy mouth or something like that?
Yep.
Where it just started to disintegrate.
Their teeth started disintegrating, falling out. They had pictures in the book. Oh my God. You could tell our producer is smiling because I was telling him about this book as I was reading it. I was like, these women are it was pretty grotesque to read, but I think it's important that the work these women were doing were important.
And she was so particular about her work that she was
all of them.
That was what was demanded of them.
Think about all of them. It was standard
practice.
It was standard
practice. That's what she was doing. She was making a fine point to paint the numbers on a watch face.
And the dial.
So that our soldiers,
glow in the dark.
when they were in the dark, could see what time it was.
And then once the war started...
Wait, it's called the sun. Okay.
Well, once the war started, once the war started, they were putting the planes together. They were painting the pieces of the plane so they would glow in the dark, so they can, swoop in at night. So, the work they did was important, but what they went through, and that is the legal battle, was the important part.
Because she couldn't hold a gun, so then she was putting radium in her mouth.
Well, this was throngs of women that went through this. But it's a fascinating book. It's one of my favorite books. It was.
I'm gonna just get pissed off and freaking leave my husband if I read that book.
It's not his fault. Look, unless he's making you paint watch faces with radium.
You know what? He is. That's why. That's what I was doing.
So you're gonna call your
one day baby.
You're gonna call your kids radium and paint, and then just walk away.
Right? You guys don't know.
That's funny. So yes, all these books about women are coming out, and I think they're important, whether they're written by men or women. I think Code Girls was written by a woman, and I know for a fact Radium Girls was written by a woman.
I would totally read a book written by a dude.
I
would need to read it and just be like, dude, come on.
Well, and it's just, I think it's the style.
Okay.
I think it's the style of the writer too. I think this particular author it's just his style to be fact based.
Right.
He might not be an emotional writer, so he might just be fact based. Whereas someone like Laura Hillenbrand will be very factual, but she's also very emotional in it. Reading Seabiscuit, going through the way she wrote the races. like my heart was pounding.
Yeah,
it was
see?
like experiencing the races
Right,
firsthand.
that's
It
what I
was
love.
amazing, and just so she's a very like lively writer.
Okay.
And so I think it just when it comes to nonfiction, it can be very difficult because you're really dependent on the style of that particular author.
Yep, you're
Agreed.
absolutely right. I like to put a book down and be like, honey, let me just tell you this. How does that make any sense? She's at the well, and then Jesus comes up to her. And then, so what's going to happen? You know, so I'm like talking about all this
Pushes
stuff.
her in.
Yeah. Yep. Whore.
Is this like a specific book that you're reading, Jonell, or like that somebody that interprets the Bible?
It's someone who's like, let's just take a minute, take a breather, step back. What are the times? The parlance of the times. What's the vernacular of the times?
Sure.
And so why might she have been at the well? Maybe not because she was a whore, but maybe because she was taking care of someone who was sick. So it's just like devil's advocate from many different areas, and then you're like, oh, okay, so, and all the townspeople believed her. They didn't just throw stones at her. Okay, so maybe we should think about what she had to say. It's a book, but I don't remember what the name of it is.
Okay.
But my thing is, like, I want to be excited. I want to tell my spouse about this book, and I didn't do that once.
That's how I
I
feel.
was like,
I
facts.
feel for somebody, and I guess it didn't really dawn on me that this is truly supposed to be historical nonfiction, and that you have to walk a fine line between artistic license and historical accuracy.
You're absolutely correct.
But I mean, you're still telling a story. I feel like he could have given again a little bit more background, or again at least even mentioned through the book. At this point, Grace is divorced her first husband. They were separated. She moved on, and then 3 years later, she met the new husband or something.
Yeah.
Like, the fact that there was no mention of that whatsoever, I'm like, oh, okay, we're Grace something else now. Okay.
It's a big deal for a woman.
Like that even
right.
right, that still even could have been a historical point of view.
Yeah, like-
without getting into
Right, like
Yeah.
perhaps like, and Grace must have felt, or Grace must have been, or Grace must have experienced. Could have been said.
sure. Right.
Yeah, because if you preface it with that sort of like, it's possible this is my interpretation, then you can't say anything's wrong with someone else's interpretation. That's just, and then it's up to you, to either agree with that or not.
Right. I don't
So-
disagree.
When you were describing so I had an author pop in mind that I think you both would probably really like, but if you're looking for, she writes, a female writer, one of my mom's favorites and has become one of my favorites is Philippa Gregory.
Okay.
She does all the Tudor family and like all that time period.
Ooh.
It's so good. Oh my gosh. She does it all from the female's point of view. It's historical fiction steeped in historical fact.
That's
Okay,
That's
see,
so
that's
yeah,
my
so
kind
she
of
takes
flavor.
she takes the timeline. This is what happened. So like the facts are historically. She is a historian. That's her degree, and then she moved over to being an author. But
She's a storyteller.
yes,
With facts.
exactly, and she which is devoid of our society today.
I just get all my news from BuzzFeed. I don't know what you're talking about.
I was going to say
Refinery 29. Okay.
Right. I was going to say, you asked, like, what kind of books do you read? CNN.com? Whatever. I don't
Fox
know.
and Friends.
What makes my eyes
my
pop out of
favorite.
my head as I'm going through my feed?
Man, I have been obsessively consuming the news the last few days, and I just need to stop because my brain's going to explode. But anyway, so Philippa Gregory, she fills in what she thinks the women of those time periods would have been thinking and what they would have
Right.
done.
Yes.
Thank you.
I don't feel like that's
it's-
unreasonable.
And she's technically historical fiction,
Okay.
but all of her timelines and everything's factual.
Sure.
Except for like the mental and what she thinks would have actually happened to
what
get
time
to
period
this point.
is she writing about?
It's all the I don't know numbers. It's all
That's
the Tudor. It's all that Tudor time period.
Oh, okay.
Like
Okay,
War
we're
of the
talking about that.
Roses.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yes.
yes, all
Okay.
that.
Okay.
So before the Tudors, through the
Yeah.
like she did all the White Princess. So that was the family before the Tudors.
Okay.
And I'm blanking on their names right now, but she does before the Tudors, and then a little bit. So she does all that. So she's so good.
Okay.
So
The book I was talking about, I remembered it. It's the Vindicating the Vixens. The
okay.
vilified, marginalized, and something or other of the Bible. And
Ooh, that sounds
so
interesting, actually.
what would it be like to have your period, and you have your period and you have to go to a freaking tent with all the other girls? But when you get in there, it's like camaraderie. How distant are we?
Right.
We're far away from each other. But back then, we were a community, a family.
Are you saying you want to go camping next time we all have our periods?
I don't know. Just make sure there's fresh straw, okay, for me to sit on. Because apparently that's what they did. I read it.
Well, I'm moving to Egypt where they made tampons out of papyrus, okay?
I'll just keep my
I'll follow
modern.
Moses over there.
I'll just keep my menstrual cup. I'm good.
But I love this concept of reinterpreting the Bible because
Yeah.
there's
Yeah.
so many people in our society who everybody pulls a quote out of their pocket. Everybody pulls a passage out of their pocket.
You can mend it.
So many people cherry pick, what suits their message
Yep.
and things of that nature. And I do think that, people, that's the word of God. That's the word of a lot of dudes' interpretations of God.
Now, your father is a
He's a minister.
minister.
Right.
Yes.
I was
forgot
like, I was
that.
battling between preacher and.
So many
forgot
do.
about that.
And he's a very atypical minister. I
That's
would
fine.
say. But I think it's important. Like, my father would agree with the statement. If Jesus Christ could see what we are doing in the way that we are treating people, i.e., the immigrants, i.e., the children in cages or abandoned Walmarts or whatever, Jesus would have put the damn rock back and went back to bed. Okay, Jesus would not have had any of that. That's not a Christ-like consciousness. What
Not at
we're
all.
doing in the name
Yep.
of these cherry-picked passages
Yep.
that we want to choose.
I agree.
That
Oh my goodness.
I'll step off my soapbox.
Oh my gosh, because I could go on for 12 hours on this.
I agree.
I
I mean,
digress.
So,
yeah.
do you tend to read multiple books at a time?
No.
No. Okay.
One.
Cool. How about you?
I'm a one at a time girl. I gotta nail one thing at a time. Okay.
Guys, I had a hard time starting this book. I read multiple books at a time. One time I had 8 books going, and I can ask Brian. I've always got 8
She's got
things
a little
going.
bit of the ADH dizzles.
A little bit.
going
So I bounce around. I've got an audiobook going. I've got my Kindle. I've got a physical book. And then I try to keep them all on my Goodreads. And then
Okay, I have a podcast and a book. That doesn't count. Podcast and a book. That's separate.
Yep. Two different things. But, there is actually a book that I listen to that is a podcast, and they read out loud one chapter at a time.
Okay.
But it's called My Dad Wrote a Porno.
Wholesome.
And this guy,
Wrote.
this guy's dad wrote a whole series of erotic fiction,
Okay.
and the son is reading it to his 2 friends. So every podcast episode is one chapter. I recommend it. It's really funny, but it's so raunchy, and it's so.
I don't know that I want to know the inner workings of my parents.
Well, that's why it's funny.
Right.
Not while I'm making dinner over
Yeah,
the
right.
speaker.
Right.
It's something I like. Sometimes I'll listen to it at work, and I'm just like.
I was gonna say I'm picturing myself in traffic going at my radio, and people are like,
Turning
"They
it
hear
down,
you?"
looking back at Beyonce,
Right.
see if she's asleep or not.
Right, exactly.
That's really funny.
I will say that I was reading this book, and obviously completely unrelated, but I have been browsing up on House of Cards also, and then I just started The Handmaid's Tale.
Oh my gosh!
So
I've
especially
read that too.
when we're talking about again all the different things of women and all those crazy dynamics, even though they're not multiple books, it did kind of all play off each other a little bit. And I'm like, let's move to Canada. Okay.
Yeah, right?
Let's
Let's do it now
pack our shit and go.
before all hell breaks loose.
Yes.
But yeah, so this one, and it's not that I didn't want to start the book, but I started it so late because I was reading multiple other books, and I was really into, I was talking about Seabiscuit. I was so into that book, and I didn't want to step away from it. But I was like, okay, so I powered through that one, and then I was like, I got to start this one, and then thank goodness because it has a companion audiobook that keeps along with the physical book. So at work, I would read it during my lunch hour, and then I would listen to it in the car, and it would kept. So I was like, okay, so it helped me get through it.
I appreciate I'm not the only slacker. Just saying. Maybe that's a Samantha thing. I don't know. Jonell was and I was like,
No.
I want to be a slacker too.
I texted you today and told you.
I think we all finished the book between last night and this morning.
No, I bought the book. I was so excited about having an autographed copy. I was so
Oh, that's
proud
right.
of
Yeah,
it.
you have an autographed copy.
Yeah.
She's fancy.
And I was reading it, and I was like, oh my gosh. And then so I stopped, and I didn't read anything. But that's just me.
Mm-hmm. Well, I go through like dry spells as well,
Yeah.
where like because I'll read 20 books, voraciously, and then I won't read for 3 months. So, and I hate those dry periods because like I have reading challenges that I do, so I'm like, oh, I'm falling behind on my challenge, so I don't want to do.
And it's okay. But if you make it a commitment, then
Right.
you fulfill the commitment, and you do
I
that.
know, Marv was like, don't be the girl that gets kicked out of book club,
Whatever.
Sam.
Gosh. Peer pressure.
I got mine paperback on Amazon. I didn't go crazy. But
Yep, I
then
just got my
my
Kindle.
puppy Wilbur literally was chewing on the corner, and I was
Shut
like,
up.
oh my god, I cannot show up to book club. Like for real though, my dog ate my book. I'm not even joking right now. So someone was in trouble.
That's
just
what
got
I tell
milk
people is like. That's what I tell people is like because I had one person the last book we did, one person did not like it, and he's like, well, what if I don't finish it? I said, hey, if you have a valid reason for not wanting to continue it, I still want you to come and talk about that reason. There's a difference between, well, I just didn't finish it because I didn't read
There's
it.
no valid reason.
And there's a
Sam.
and there's a valid reason to abandon a book if it is not what you want to be reading.
I've only ever abandoned one book in my life. I tried to read Roots as a very young child, and I emotionally and mentally was not old enough to process the story of Kunta Kinte. I got about as far as him coming to the States, and I think being
it's
sold.
great that
and
you wanted to do it at that young age.
Yeah.
I tried. That's the
haven't
challenge
read it.
of being a kid who has a higher reading comprehension is that you continue to move up the ladder, but then you don't have the life experience to be able to mentally and emotionally process it.
I relate to that.
That was totally different.
I relate
Same
to that.
thing with Beowulf. I tried to read Beowulf as a child.
I've read Beowulf multiple times.
And even though I read it and I could understand what was happening, I didn't understand the nuances and what that really symbolized because I'm 10 and I play with frickin' Barbies.
Yeah.
So
there are a couple books I want to go back and reread as an adult now.
I
so
agree.
I have a list and I'm like, okay, I want to reread. But since we're getting ready to wrap up, I have something for you guys.
No.
You can always come back. So our Q3 book, I'm super excited about. You each get a copy.
Okay. Hooray.
Is called The Badass Librarians of Timbuktu.
Ooh.
I cannot wait to read this. I'm so
All
excited.
right. Wow.
And you each get a copy.
Thank you.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you.
Hooray.
It's free.
Awesome.
Yes, it is.
Okay.
And let me know if you want to come back. I mean, both of you are always welcome.
Oh.
But
I appreciate, the font and the...
No, you're okay.
Did anyone else struggle with the font in Mrs. Sherlock
I
Holmes?
didn't.
I don't know.
Maybe because I was going back and forth between the audiobook and the...
And I don't know if my
Physical book.
My paperback, the font was small, and the page had a lot of color to it. I had
me just
surgical
show you.
lights going on to read. And
I'm
Marv's
just going
like,
to show
"Are
you the autograph of the
Show the
of the
camera the
Ooh.
autograph.
of
Yeah, but Marv thinks I'm Helen Keller, and I'm just going to start
Wow.
reading in Braille because I could not get enough light. I really struggled with the literal font of the
This?
book.
No, this was the Kindle font.
No, mine looked different, and
in
mine
this.
mine looked different than that too. It was very small.
Was it some
also.
stupid little messy thing?
No, it was it was a atypical font. It was
Gosh,
more
that's
stylized. I mean, I wasn't reading
It didn't
I don't know,
look
Courier
basic,
New or
easier.
some or. It wasn't an awful font, but it was. I literally had a physical hard time reading the book.
Yeah,
Gosh,
that sucks.
dang.
That's what. Once they came out with the audio companion, I texted you guys and was like, "Hey," because
Yeah.
I knew I
Well,
wouldn't get through it without
I
that.
stole the reading light that you bought my kid.
You used the lamb. You used the little
Yes,
sheep.
I'm there with the lamb and my iPhone and 3 different lights. Marv's like, "Are you?"
Oh, that's so funny.
good. Yeah, keeping it classy.
So now that we're wrapping up, you guys have the Q3 book. I've given a few book recommendations. Janelle, anything that you recommend for the people to read?
If you're religious, as I am, probably
Or even just interested in religion, period.
Yeah. The Vindicating the Vixens was an amazing book because I grew up in the church. And I can't get down with a book that's all about you're either a whore or you had sex. that's not cool by me. So it was interesting to hear all the stories that I learned as a child. I didn't realize what was happening to my mind when I heard it the first time. So Vindicating the Vixens, it's by a chick. And it's about all the vilified, marginalized women in the Bible. And I think that every woman who is a powerful woman who wants to do more with her life than what's average should read it.
Thank you. Anything, whether you read it 10 years ago or yesterday, anything that you would like to recommend?
Well, my favorite author is Tom Robbins. If ever you meet someone who says they're also a fan of Tom Robbins, they're probably a keeper and a little quirky and weird. But I just encourage all people. I'm really taken aback, and I have been guilty of this. Prior to the book that we just read, my last book I read was Audacity of Hope by Barack Obama during his first campaign. So I've really taken a hiatus. The only thing I was reading really was news. So just please, read. No. Just make our world less stupid. I really appreciate that. Thank you.
6 minutes of reading reduces stress up to 60%.
Unless your dog is trying to eat your book simultaneously.
Yeah, I've run into that too.
Yeah.
I've got 2 terriers, I understand. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you, Sam. Thank you, JoJo. And we'll see you all next time.
Woohoo!
Awesome conversation with Sam and JoJo. And I'd like to say a big thank you for them for joining me today. So if you have any book recommendations for them, go ahead and leave them in the comments. We talked extensively about what types of things we like, don't like. So any sort of book recommendations, or if you've read what they've read, just leave anything in the comments, as long as they're positive and constructive. Also, a cool thing was happening today in Columbus was the Pride Parade. So to everyone who's out there, hope you had a wonderful time, and thank you so much to the LGBT community for spreading love and tolerance throughout the world. Appreciate it. July 14th is It's All Been Done Radio Hour's 3rd anniversary. We will be having performing for 3 years. So go to madlab.net/tickets, get your tickets, get there. Last year, we almost sold out. We were 2 seats away from selling out. So be there, help us sell out, support It's All Been Done Radio Hour, which is part of It's All Been Done Presents. So that's, a whole network of written work, videos just like this one, and others like Nikki Tells You How to Live Your Life and other podcasts. So next quarter is The Badass Librarians of Timbuktu. Super excited. I already have 1 guest slotted, and I cannot wait to talk to her about it. So thank you so much, and we'll see you next quarter.